Hey guys, Dr. B. This is a video to show you how to understand pedigrees in terms of figuring out genotypes and phenotypes and how to read them. Um, so generally speaking, just to talk about this, we can see that we have three generations here. Um, this right here, let me just show you this way here. This is what we consider the first generation. This would be the second. This would be the third. So basically in generation one, person one, that would be that person right there. And a square means the sex of male, just so you can kind of keep that straight. And the circle means the sex of female. So basically the idea, it really doesn't have anything to do with marriage. This really has to do with having kids. They can be married or not, whatever makes you feel better. Um, So here's basically the male and the female that had offspring, and we can see here that there's a certain number of offspring that that generation had. So that male and that female had one male, one female, another female, another male, and another female. So biologically speaking, you can see here that this line connects directly to these five people. So basically generation 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 5, and 2, 7, they're all brothers and sisters. Um, in terms of this person right here, this person right here um, had, it looks to be like relations, no kids, which is kind of a weird thing to put there, with that particular female. However, the son, number 5, did in fact have offspring with this female that was unrelated, and then they had 3 kids. So hopefully that understanding of at least the first part of this will make sense. So now let's take a look and see what's going on here. The other thing to note in pedigrees is the part that's filled in. So we can see here that this person right here, right, generation 2, the first son, looks different from his brother in the sense that this box is filled in with colors and this one is not. And so what it means is that this person right here is affected by some sort of thing we're looking at. And in this case, the idea is, would this be a dominant trait that every generation has, or is it something recessive? And the answer is it's recessive, because you can see here that the parents do not have the trait, but some of their offspring do. And the other thing is that these are not all males, or mostly males that have it. So, I mean, that could potentially be looked at as sex linked, but it's not. So we can tell that whatever this condition is that the filled in people have, it's basically considered autosomal recessive. So now let's start putting some kind of value to this. So let's just make this, oh, what's a good one? Let's just say like earlobes, for example. So, most humans have earlobes that look like this. This is where you would put the earring, for example. I don't know. And then some people have earlobes that look like this. And you can see the clear difference here is that area in there. So this is a terrible earlobe. But you can see that that's where they would have their little earring. I had one a long time ago, back in the 90s. It was cool. So you can see the major difference. And most people, by the way, as you can tell, most people have this. And the less people have that. And that's why we know that that's dominant. So we're going to give a letter to the phenotype, basically. And we're going to call that big letter A. And it's big A because most people have it. And we're going to basically call people, or the allele for the gene of the connected earlobe, is little a. Why is it still the same letter? Well, the answer is it's the same gene. The gene is the earlobe, the way it hangs, and the two versions of it, which are called alleles, is a dominant allele, which is large A, and a recessive allele, which is the smaller a. But because you have a mom and a dad, both of these parents gave only one copy to the kids. So we can already figure out here that if a person looks like this, another person looks like this, and a third person has the genes of that, where, by the way, this allele would be from, let's just say, the mom, and that would be from the dad. We know that in this case, with autosomal recessive, this person's going to have what's called normal. Doesn't mean you're abnormal if you don't, but they're going to have a normal earlobe because they have a large letter A. This person, even though they have a small one, in this case, is still going to look normal. Because they have a large one. However, this person here doesn't have the normal allele to produce that type of earlobe. So that person's basically going to be called recessive. And there's another way that you can write these. A lot of times we can also write them with pluses or non-pluses. And so that's a whole other way. So sometimes we could rewrite things like this. So instead of writing, big A's and little a's, we a lot of times will just choose whatever the gene is, like let's just call it that. And in terms of a totally dominant, sometimes we can write it like this. And these three ways are the same as what's written across. So in real genetics, I mean, real, but this is how it's really done in the collegiate level and also in, the real world, is by the idea of a plus, which means the dominant version or the lack of it. So you can see here that this is just basically the gene for A. So A with a plus and A with a plus would basically be the same as somebody who had completely dominant genes. And so that's just yet another way to do it. But to make this simple for today, I'm just going to let's just use the plus system here because this is the one you're going to see the most. So we can now start to figure out the genotypes of these people. So there's a couple of these we already know. We already know that first of all, generation 2, son number 1, we can already figure out what their genotype is. And that person's genotype has to be little a, little a. So is this person, little a, and so is this person over here, little a, little a. I actually should write on top of them. It's a little easier, so I'll go ahead and fix the other two real quick. There we go. So it doesn't matter whether they're males and females. It has nothing to do with this gene because the gene for these earlobes is not carried on the X chromosome, and we can see that because we have, not most males having it. There's other ways that we can tell, but that's enough for you guys right now. So there's a couple things we can kind of figure out. We can figure out the genotype of the parents, and we can do that based on some of the kids. So since this particular kid, for example, got little a, one of those alleles came from the female and one came from the male. So we already know that one of the letters of both of these has to be a little a. So now the question is, what's the first letter? What goes right here? And the answer has to be this. And I'm going to rewrite that to make that a little clearer. And so now we say it makes a little more sense. So the male, for example, right here has the A plus and the A, and that tells us that this male has a dominant version of the gene for the hanging earlobe, and also a recessive one. And we know that he has both because he does not have a blacked-in square, or he does not have the recessive type. So therefore, he is a heterozygous. And this is how these kids were made. Now, this child right here, we don't actually know what the exact genotype of this person is right here. That guy right there. Or I should say girl. And the reason why is because the genotype that thing could have gotten, that person could have gotten, it could be that from dad and that from mom, which of course is possible. It could be this from dad and that from mom, which still looks the same. It could be this from dad and that from mom. So we don't really know which of those three it is. So that particular individual, we're not sure what the genotype is in that case. This person right here, we have absolutely no idea as well, because they're not even related to the rest of the family. But, obviously this person would have to be heterozygous or homozygous dominant. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time on this guy right here, generation 2, number 5. This would be a fair question on a test. You'll get something like this. But what absolutely 100% is this person's genotype? And you may be saying, well, heck, I don't know, because he could be, A plus A, or he could be A plus A plus, and both of those would have a clear or a non trait for the attached earlobe. But we actually do know, because the way we do it is we can look by the child, and we can see that these two people right here had 3 of these kids, 2 of which we're not sure what their genotypes are, but 1 of which we are. This child right here tells us exactly what the genotypes of both of these people are here. And the answer in this case is going to be that this person must be that. And in this case, and by the way, she, the mother of the daughter, has to also be that. And the reason why is that that daughter got from dad that allele and from mom that allele. And since mom and dad do not have a colored in, or they're not affected by this recessive trait, that's why they have to have the plus one. So this is the type of thing you'd have to do on an exam, and hopefully it'll help you to understand the fundamentals of how pedigrees can tell us what genotypes and phenotypes are.